Kia ora, welcome to Under the Checkered Flag, MotoGP edition. I'm your host Kate, and we're just going to jump right in.
It's Kate, Kelly and PozzA, and we are back for the Sachsenring preview. As you may or may not have seen in recent days/weeks, there's been a lot of speculation about the rescheduled Kazakhstan Grand Prix. So the latest news is that Kazakhstan, which replaced India, which India has been postponed until next year, which is a funny way of saying cancelled for 2024, but Kazakhstan slid into that spot. Word is now that Kazakhstan is going to be cancelled and replaced by the Doha Grand Prix, which is a nice way of saying that we now have a second Qatar Grand Prix at the start of our triple header. Admittedly, my printed out calendar looks like a mess, but overall, I quite like the Qatar Grand Prix. But what are your guys' thoughts?
Qatar is honestly one of my favorite tracks on the calendar, and being a night race, it does sort of add that extra atmosphere that I think is really cool. And as much as I'd love to see another Qatar race. It would be nicer to see them not sort of confirm a race before they're actually 100% sure it can go through, which is something I've seen some of the journalists saying. They're all sort of saying like they have all their flights and that booked already, and they're gonna have to cancel that now and change it over to Qatar. So logistically, it does kind of suck, but I like Qatar, so I am happy there's a second race there. There's rumored to be a second race there.
I mean, I love Qatar as well. It is a great track. Obviously, night races as well. I extremely love night races. However, a rant about this whole situation, right? How can one organization be genuinely so disorganized that they had it in India and that had it in Kazakhstan? They're like, no, no, we can't do that. Never mind. Then they had it in India and they're like, oh no, never mind. That's postponed. And then they're back to Kazakhstan, and now they're rumored that they can't go to Kazakhstan. Why even attempt to have a race there if you have no clue if it's ever even going to happen? It's unfair on fans. It's unfair on the riders and their teams. Like they're having their flights booked. Like they need to have this prepared months in advance. And you're just going to tell them, oh yeah, no, by the way, we're not going there. We're going like halfway, like we're going halfway across the world to this country. Like obviously not, but it's not fair. And I feel like it's not talked about. Like I feel like the frustration from like teams and fans is not talked about enough in this situation. They need to sort themselves out. I understand it must be stress inducing for them as well, but you need to have this planned out at the start of the year. You need to have backups for this because this just seemed severely unplanned, and I'm not happy about it at all.
Another potential issue could be the time of year they're planning to go over to Qatar, because as we sort of saw in the F1 race there last year, in that sort of time of the year, it gets like stupidly hot even during night. So hopefully they can sort of plan around that. But if we see another situation like India last year where we have like Jorge Martin passing out after the race and sort of feeling the effects during the later stages of the race, it might not be the greatest idea, but we'll see.
It won't be like I definitely see. Oh, can I make an F1 reference? I will. Right. I understand completely different sport, but it is essentially the same situation and obviously same country. Qatar 2023. What I understand this is bikes, but it's a very good reference to have as to how like severely dangerous this could be. Um, it was definitely dangerous for the riders. There was like genuine clips of Alex Albon being unable to get out of his car. Half the drivers ended up in the medical room. It was a mess. It was completely dangerous, and that's why they changed the time of year this time. What's happening here could just genuinely be a dangerous situation for the riders, and nobody wants that to happen. So, as much as I feel fear for them, it's just extremely unorganized, and I feel like for safety, it may not be the best to go to, but if it's their only option, it's their only option.
Yeah, I'm going to follow in from both your points in the fact that this is an absolute mess. And quite simply, in my opinion, it is unacceptable for a championship of this level. Like, we are the premier class of motorcycle racing, and a race got cancelled a few weeks out, and then it's been rescheduled, and then it's been cancelled again. Initially, the reasoning for the cancellation was totally valid. They had a natural disaster. Rescheduling of Kazakhstan, that was a cancellation without being a cancellation, and you do feel like Dorna have come in and said, okay, hi Qatar, we've cancelled, India, so we're going to slot them in the first position. How can we get this deal across the line? And Qatar have just gone, we want a second race this year. It just leaves a very bad taste in your mouth, and I don't like it. Like, I don't like it at all. And as PozzA said earlier, the journalists, the people who have booked their flights on non-refundable as early as possible because they are living on the skin of their teeth. We need to also consider the Moto3 and Moto2 teams who pay so much to come to these races. They've lost a huge amount of money here, without a doubt. And I highly doubt that Dorna is giving them that money back. I hope it is. I really hope it is, and I hope they're covering it. If they're not, realistically, IRTA will be doing that, but I really don't like the way that this calendar has played out, and it's sort of made me doubtful for in the future. Like, obviously, I'm gonna want to start attending more races, and I'm sure you guys will be too in the future. I have just gone on a far too long rant, but it does leave a sense of distrust in the mouth. Anyway, let's move on to Germany. So, enough of my ranting. Let's move on to our predictions in Germany. So, normally I'd start Moto3, but we're going to start with Kelly this week.
Okay, so coming on to my Moto3 predictions. Right. So going on to Moto3, I did make, how would we say it? Would we say a shocking, depressing, sad, brave, brave choice by me? I had removed Collin Veijer from my P1 in the hopes that he would get P1 at his home race. Um, that unfortunately did not happen. It was close to happening. It was extremely close to happening. But it did not happen, as sad as it was. So, as much as Kate and Paz most certainly thought I'd put him straight back onto my P1 this week, I have not. I have continued on with David Alonso. His form has just been absolutely on it. I feel like he's a safe bet to make for your winner, and I have kept Colin Vire in P2, so I may make him a P2 merchant at this point. I am not sure. But we'll see how that goes. If he gets P2 again this week, then we know I am literally like some form of witch that makes him P2 every week. And then P3, I have Ivan Artola, who stole, no, not stole, who deservedly took the win from Colin Vire over the weekend, and he is my P3. And then as a reserve, I weirdly enough have Danny Holgado.
I've based this quite like largely off of last year, but in P3 I've gone David Munoz just because he started from the back of the grid last year and had a long lap penalty and still managed to jump his way up to 12th. And with the amount of spread of the field we saw in Moto3 last year, I feel like that was a lot more impressive than it sounds. So I think he'll have another good race if he can keep himself penalty free. In second, I've gone Collin Veijer, just purely because last year he qualified quite well, got a really good start, led for 2 corners before Dennis Anju carved him up into turn 2, turn 3. But I think with the form that he's on, he can have a good race. And same as always for the winner, I've gone David Alonso just because he still seemed like kind of quick in Assen, and it's a track that he doesn't like. He did really well last year in Germany as a rookie. He was fighting the likes of Masia, his teammate Yamanaka, some experienced heads last year, and still managed to come out on top of them. And as my reserve, I've gone Ivan Otola just because he's also in good form.
it paid off for me the weekend that has just been. So I'm going to disagree with you both yet again. In P3, I'm going to agree with Poz and go David Munoz. But in P2, I'm going for David Alonso again. Admittedly, he was strong here last year, and given his form lately, I do think he'll be battling up there. But I think Ortola's going to take the top spot for the second weekend in a row. And I also think that Danny Holgado is going to be battling up there, but that Gas have sort of fallen a bit on the wayside in the sense because they seem to be testing so much but not coming up with a lot of results. Kelly, before I want to give my Moto2 predictions, given the way things played out last week, do you want to give yours first? And that's not negotiable.
Well, if it's non-negotiable, then I guess I must. On to Moto 2. I have made a small switch. Obviously, before you say it, before anyone says it, even though you will not say it as I'm speaking, and I have the right to do so, I have not put Furman as my number one. I will not put Furman as my number one because when I took him off my number one, he actually performed decently well, minus a long lap penalty, which he seems to gather like they're collectibles. Anyway, I have put Ayagura as my winner. He's been really, really on form. I genuinely feel like he has been. So I feel like he has a very good chance. He's come up a lot since the start of the season. Like he's been absolutely on it. So he's been a decent choice. I have Sergio Garcia in second. He obviously didn't have the weekend everyone would expect, but he has still been consistent and he took the podium instead of fighting for a win, which I think was a smart decision. So I feel like he'd be a good second. And then I have Fermin Aldeguer as third because I won't take him off my podium and I'm hoping it'll get him a second or a first. So he's there. And then as my reserve, I have Jake Dixon because I feel like he has been pretty good. He hasn't been exceptional, but he's been a solid choice to have. So
Following on from that, I'm just going to roll into my predictions. Your predictions have made me doubt mine because I put Furman in P1 purely because you didn't last weekend, and I swapped Agura out, so that hurt me quite significantly. If I had backed my gut, I would have been leading the, metaphorical championship. But in P1 this week, I am backing my gut and putting Ayagura in P1. In P2, I'm going with Sergio Garcia. And in P3, I'm going for Alonso Lopez. I'm, backing the Boscoscoros hard. And the reserve, I'm going for Manu Gonzalez. And admittedly, I was tossing up hard this week between Gonzalez and Tony Arbolino, given how strong Tony Arbolino's been in the last couple of races. But yeah, at the end of the day, I've got to go Gonzalez just because I don't quite trust Tony enough right now. Yeah, we just got to see how it goes.
I have gone for Manu Gonzalez in P3 just purely because I didn't think of him until Kate just mentioned him, so thanks for that. I've gone for championship leader Sergio Garcia to take another podium, keeping up his consistent run. I've got him P2. And winning this race just purely because I've thought it's really hard to get a track limits penalty in Germany. I've gone Fermin Aldeguer. I think this one will be the one where he gets back on the top step. And as my reserve, just because of his strong form lately, I've gone Ayagura.
All solid and totally valid predictions there. But it's time to talk about MotoGP. It's a tough one. I'm just gonna throw it out there. I had a hard time with the top spot, which is quite, I suppose, controversial, being a massive, massive Marc Marquez fan. And while I do want him to do the double this weekend, I'm not entirely convinced that he's going to. But alas, my predictions remain reliable as to where my heart wants this weekend to go. So for the sprint, in P3 I have Pecco Bagnaia, in P2 I have Jorge Martin, and in P1 I have, obviously, Marc Marquez. For my reserve, I have Enea Bastianini. I think it's just going to be completely Ducati domination, and I think that the king at the Sachsenring is going to come out on top.
Okay, right. For me, I have made a small switch, not now, but from my regular sprint predictions. Obviously, this rider has not been as on form in the sprints as I would like him to be, and as much as he is the sprint merchant in my heart, Jorge Martin is not number one on my sprint predictions. I need to change it around because I have Pecco Bagnaia there now. That man has been on form race after race after race, and I feel like he's a safer bet at this point in time. So I have him P1, Martin P2, and then I have Marquez P3 because obviously, the king of the Sachsen ring. I do hold faith that he'll do something this weekend. I really do. He just has not been on form to the point where I want him to be, so I do not hold enough faith in him yet that he will get a win. So I have Mark P3, and then as my reserve, I have Enea Bastianini. Please don't shoot me.
I think this is probably for the first time this year. I'm going to reverse the order. I have Marc Marquez to win just because of his history at this track. He's won every race that he's taken part in, which doesn't really tell the whole story, seeing as every race that he's missed in Germany, or every race that he hasn't won, he's missed through injury. But in P2, I've gone Jorge Martin, just because, same as every other weekend, how historically strong he's been in sprint races. He's always up there. And P3, I've gone Pedro Acosta, just because I hope he has a good weekend. I'd love to see him win the race, but I haven't actually put him to win the main race. And as my reserve, same as always, it feels like the safest option. I've gone Pecco Bagnaia, just because he never really performs in the sprint. This might surprise you guys, but in P3, I've actually put Marc Marquez.
Why did you make my mistake, Poz? Why did you do that to yourself?
What have you done?
That was something out of a movie. One of those really sad, depressing ones when someone betrays the other person. How could you?
So yeah, after that brief interruption, I've gone Marc Marquez P3. No real reason, honestly. I just feel like there's a few riders that might pass him with a better bike. Pecco Bagnaia, I've put P2. Same as always, seems to show up in the main races. And to win, just because he did the double last year, I've gone Jorge Martin. And as my reserve, Pedro Acosta, just because, again, I hope he does well.
Right. So, let's have a little chat. So, right, after my apparently shocking sprint predictions, Kate and I decided to have a little girls' fight off mic. Which you most likely will not hear, but that's irrelevant. However, she did not care to listen to what my MotoGP race predictions would be. She was just hurt regardless. She did not know that for my race, I put Marc Marquez's P1 because she decided to take insult to the fact that I did not put him as P1 for the sprint. That's just a bit irritating, isn't it? I could have been nice and told her that I had Marc as P1, but I didn't because I was annoyed. Anyway, Marc Marquez is P1. Hope everyone's happy. I'm also happy because I do shockingly have faith in the king of the Sachsen ring. In P2, I have Pecco Bagnaia, and P3, I have Jorge Martin. Shock horror. And as my reserve, I have Enea Bastianini. Boom!
I'm glad one of us has faith in Mark at the Sachsenring, because I don't. I have been debating this for quite a while, and yeah, I gave you shit. But the fact is, I don't think that Marc Marquez is going to win at the Sachsenring. I am going to start with my P1 prediction, and my P1 prediction is going to be Pedro Acosta.
What? Sorry. No,
I'm just sending it.
Whoa. Hang on. What?
Oh,
Whatever,
look,
go on.
you just go hard or go home, and I'm 0.5 points behind PozzA. Admittedly, he hasn't gone for Mark, so I could have just like banked it safe here, I feel. But the fact is, you know what? Yeah, I want Pedro to beat Mark. Like, I want that passing of the baton or whatever that we missed when Mark crashed out in Jerez in 2020. But it would be so, like, bittersweet as a huge Marc Marquez fan for Mark to lose at the Saxon Ring because he's obviously been holding on to that clear winning streak for so long. Yeah, I just want Pedro to just come in and take it. Take that, youngest victory for a MotoGP rider. But carrying on my predictions, Marc Marquez, I've got in P2, and Jorge Martin, I've got in P3. As my reserve, I have Enea Bastianini. So there you go. Those are my predictions.
We got yelled at.
Honestly, I'm in shock and horror by what came out of my mouth because I can guarantee you on my spreadsheet before recording, Mark was in P1 in the race, and yeah. The decision came out. I didn't even know it was gonna, but there we go.
I cannot believe this. I have been ridiculed. You didn't even care to ask what my P1 for the race was. And that's what you do. Wow. Okay, Kate. I see how it is. I see where your priorities lie.
Thank you so much for listening. We honestly appreciate every view, every like, and every subscribe that we get. We want to know your predictions, so leave a comment or slide into our messages on Discord. We'll be back on Monday recapping the German Grand Prix, and have a great week, everyone.